Hello and welcome. Today we're joined by a good friend of mine, John Hartley, who is the head physio at Derby County Football Club. So, John, welcome.
Yeah, thanks for having us, Andy. Looking forward to the chat.
No problem. I know you've been offended that I've waited this long to invite you. So,
offended is not the right word, but I was interested in obviously listening to the other ones you've had, and I thought this would be great if getting down what's happened over the last few years, if you like. But no, yeah. Thanks for inviting us in the end.
No, definitely. No, I'm looking forward to it. Like, and we've known each other for a long time now. And this is one of the main reasons why I like doing this, is because you never really hear about people's career. Like, I know a little bit about your time at university via my brother, but we'll get into that anyway. So, John, so tell me about you then. Like, where are you from?
Yeah, so originally I was born in Halifax. I grew up in a place called Brighouse, which is sort of between Halifax and Huddersfield. Grew up there, same family house, never moved. In fact, my mum's lived there all her entire life. We've only just managed to get her to move. We used to be my grand's house, so in the same place in a village called Clifton. And then went to college in Huddersfield, which is, so when people ask me where I'm from, I always say Huddersfield, because that's sort of where I felt my adult life started, if you like, going to sixth form college, doing my A-levels, growing up a little bit like you do, which probably set me on the path of where we end up to today, really. So I went to college then to do my A-levels at a place called Greenhead College in Huddersfield. And it's probably going there, meeting some of my friends who are still good friends now, that sort of set me on the path to where we are today, I think. Just in the sense that I think they were more intelligent than I was. So for the first time sort of in life, in that sense, that the realization hit me that I might have to pull my finger out and start doing some work to keep up with my mates and not be too embarrassed by how intelligent they were in comparison to me.
And so at that point, had you decided that what you wanted to do was physio on the agenda?
No, not really. Physio came about like at college. There was sort of a little group of four lads, for four of us. Two of them were twin brothers, and then me and one of the other lads. Obviously, we all became good friends. We'd all played football against each other as kids, but not. I'd not played football together with these lads, but we played against them in the local league and things like that. And the two twin brothers, a couple of really intelligent lads. They were both on to study medicine. They were going to Cambridge. They kind of had a plan in their heads of what they wanted to do, and that was going to be their path. And then my other friend, he was on the path that he thought physio might be a good, career pathway and a good choice. And that I was a little bit sort of caught in the middle, really, not really knowing what I wanted to do. I knew that I wanted to go to university because it sounded exciting. My elder sister, she'd been to university before, and I'd seen, those, that aspect of life, if you like, that would be, a good step and a thing to do. But it was then trying to narrow down, well, what am I, what am I good at? What could I go to do at university? And I guess because the other three were sort of heading in that direction of, medical or, professions allied to medicine. I started looking into it then, and I've looked at potentially courses, and at that point, I think there was only sort of a couple of universities in the UK that were doing chiropractic as a degree, and I think one of those was like 6 years. It was privately funded, and from my background, if you like, there was no way we were kind of affording for me to pay to go to university when there was other options on the table that were good options too. So started looking into physio then. So yeah, my friend, a guy called Darren Griffiths, he was doing physio. So I started getting into him a little bit about, what do you think? What's made you think about this? As daft as it is, I thought, well, I'm not intelligent enough to go and do medicine at Cambridge like the other two, so let's scrub that one off straight away. And started looking at physio and seeing if I could do physio. And that's sort of how it came about, really. I got injured as well in my second year at college. Like I just injured my MCL, nothing major, but maybe missed a few football matches, which sort of was a big hit, and niggled on a little bit, and it took probably longer because, at that time and at that age, I didn't know what support I could probably get to try and help me get better. And that's probably what guided me down the path of physio, really.
So for your at college, did you pick the subject? It obviously wasn't geared to go into physio then.
No, when I sort of chose my subjects, I ended up changing one of my A levels because I just wasn't happening for me, and there was a lot of it was psychology I ended up getting rid of and changing to human biology. And I remember thinking there's a lot of essays in this psychology A level. I'm thinking surely if I could just learn some facts and move on, then that's got to be easier in life. So I shifted then. So it wasn't geared up in the sense of right, I need to choose my A levels in line with what I'm going to do. It was more physio came after that point, if you like. So I was already on the road. I remember going because the two boys, called Tom and Andy Fernley, two of my good friends. They were going to Cambridge. So me and Griff had gone to see the guy who was in charge of like all the Oxbridge applications and things. So we've walked in to sort of see this fella. And I'll never forget his face because he was just used to dealing with, he knew out of the college who were the intelligent ones and who were going to go to Oxford or Cambridge. And it definitely wasn't the two lads who were standing in front of him asking him if they thought there was anything that we could maybe do at Oxford or Cambridge. And he just looked us up and down and just was like, sorry, what was your name, boys? It was proper like back in the old school headmaster's office going, who are these two clowns that have just strolled in here? You know what I mean? So we had a good chuckle about it, particularly with the two Fernley twins, and they were laughing, sort of going, don't worry about it, lads. You do what you want to do, and that's how we ended up really going and ending up physio was the next best thing that we could come up with, and yeah, it's worked out great, so I can't complain. But yeah, we had some eventful time before we actually got to the university. Really.
And then universities, then how did you end up in Manchester?
I guess like anyone, obviously put a few different places down. Manchester at the time was a Manchester School of Physio. It was affiliated to the University of Manchester. It was, I think, it may still be like the biggest sort of intake, biggest physio school in Europe at the time. When you go and have a quick look round, it wasn't a million miles from home. It was probably 45 minutes from home, but it felt like miles away because one was Yorkshire, one was Lancashire or Greater Manchester, I guess, at that point. But so it always felt far because as a family, like growing up, like my mum and dad never would like going to Leeds was a big day out. We couldn't just drive to Leeds. That'd take 15 minutes in the car. It was like no, we had to drive somewhere, then we had to get on a bus because it was too busy to drive. Crazy. So it felt far away, but close enough if I needed to get home. I could get home. So, and Manchester, I grew up as a Man United fan. My dad was a Man United fan before I started working in football and sport. When things tend to change a bit, then don't they? But so it seemed like a natural place to go. Things sort of fit, and yeah, so it ended up in Manchester then studying physio. So yeah, then it all sort of kicked on from there, really. And that's probably when I met your brother, playing football at university.
So was football your game then? Is that like always the main thing? You weren't a rugby guy?
No, I'm not brave enough or mad enough, I don't think, to play rugby league. I'd always played football, albeit probably not at the greatest of standards. I'm sure many people will vouch for me there. So yeah, football was always my thing, my enjoyment, if you like, my sport that I played. I played a lot of cricket as a kid as well and a bit of swimming. But yeah, football was sort of my passion of sport, if you like. And I always hoped that I'd end up working in football. I'd always hoped that, I guess one day I'd run out at Old Trafford. I knew it wouldn't be playing. So, as a physio, that's probably as close as I could get, or all these big stadiums. But when you go into physio and start doing the degree, obviously, like that, it's kind of frowned upon that you have an interest in sport. A lot of people go into starting a physio degree thinking, yeah, I want to go do this and I do that, and they see it all glamorous as working in sport. So before I got there, I had to obviously do different bits of work experience in different environments just to get me an actual understanding of what I was getting myself into, because obviously, physio is a lot broader than the tiny little bit that I currently do, if you like.
And so those experiences then on placements and various other things, then how did you find that?
Yeah, I guess when you obviously to do the physio degree, you end up doing all your placements and your different times in different areas. And I think if nothing else, like sometimes it surprised me that what I was actually interested in, because obviously I'd kind of gone into it a little bit, not blinded, but a little bit focused on what I was hoping my area of skill or expertise or interest would be coming out the other end. So things like, these things I remember doing about like my neuro rotations, and in my neuro bits, obviously we had some bits that were in the hospital in the ward. I also had one placement that was in a school, with kids with cerebral palsy, Down syndrome, different aspects of things. And I kind of, because of the neuro aspect, and my mind's quite logical and methodical, if you like, I like to see how things work. And with neuro, it was one of those things where you're going, all right, that's interesting, this has happened, or, how is that then affecting the rest of the body? And in my mind, I was always going to be a musculoskeletal physio. I was always going to be treating sports injuries. I was always going to be that. But seeing those side of things, like, it made me appreciate, right, it's probably not what I'm going to end up with, but how do I get the best, how do I get the best information from this environment? Like, I remember a guy's name, obviously, not that he potentially will listen to this podcast, but I won't say his actual name, but I'll never forget this lad's name that I saw on a ward of a young student who'd been cycling down Oxford Road in Manchester, been hit by a bus, ended up with a head injury. And what a state this poor lad was in. And just bizarre. My wife, sadly, she's a physio as well, and a lecturer at the university. And just by chance and coincidence, she was a junior in the hospital where the placement was, and I was my senior was also her senior in the hospital. So I was a student, and then my girlfriend at the time was the junior. So we were looking after this lad. So he never, like, his name will never, as a couple, if you like, we'll never forget what we went through rehab wise with him, and now we try to work with him. But that was the interesting bit. Was probably the highlight of the placements, was the things that I thought I wouldn't necessarily be interested in, that I got so much out of. But it also definitely highlighted some areas I had no interest in as well. You turn up on a ward for 6 weeks, and then respiratory is not my area of interest, and I'm doing a respiratory placement. I'm thinking, no, this is definitely not for me. But obviously, as a junior physio, when you do qualify, a lot of that was being on call, called out to ICU and suctioning chests and all these aspects that I was thinking, nah, this is not going to be where I'll be focusing my attention going on. So it helped clarify a few bits of what my real passion and what my real interest in which bits of physio were sort of where I'd want to be, really.
So in terms of that, your now wife then, so did you meet in that placement then?
Well, we met at university in Manchester. I think we were probably a couple before that placement, if you like. We'd know, because we met at university. She was already working at that point. So yeah, we'd been together for probably a couple of years by that point, when we by chance with where the placements were, ended up sort of working on. She was having to put up with me on a daily basis at work. She's thankful that I go to work now, so she shouldn't have to spend as much time with me. But no, so yeah, we've been together for a long time. So since the end of my first year at university. So yeah.
Yeah, no, must be. And then in terms of you moving into sport, then what was like your first route into that?
Yeah, so I when we were in the third year at physio school, it was one of those things where we could apply to go and work and do a placement for 2 weeks, either at Manchester United or Blackburn Rovers. We didn't know, we just obviously applied, and then they interviewed us and allocated us a place where we were going on placement. So I ended up going to Blackburn for a couple of weeks with obviously one of your previous guests, who sort of my I guess early mentor in the world of physio, Dave Fever. So I went and did a 2-week placement with Dave up at Blackburn, and it's crazy when you think about what 2 weeks now. I remember we spoke probably 2 weeks ago, and I think of it, it's flown by like that. But I remember at the time, like 2 weeks, like there every day. It's like, and at those points it was one of the things, right? A placement was Monday to Friday, So if you think about sport, well, you know, it goes beyond that. So I remember Dave sort of saying to me, well, you know, what do you want to do? You know, we've got this on Saturday or Sunday, or we've got this in the evening then. And I'm like, I'll just do everything. Like, I'll just come and camp out here. I remember I think I drove from Brickhouse some days when I borrowed my mum's car. I drove from my sister's house in Halifax sometimes to get there. You know, or from Manchester. I just, you know, I basically stole my mum's car for a few weeks and was just there. Whenever you need me, Dave, I'm here. I remember as we went on a course, he was teaching on a course. Said, "Do you want to come and do this course?" Yeah, come and do the course, no problems. And yeah, so just immersed myself in it for a couple of weeks, and I mean, just a different world. It was just so different to what I've been doing in the outpatients or the you know, in the hospital at different areas. And so I had that opportunity basically to go do that for a couple of weeks, and I loved it. So when I was finishing my degree, I just touched base with Dave and said, look, thanks ever so much, obviously, for your support when I did the placement. It was great. I've finished my degree now. You know, I've got my results. I've passed. I've qualified as a physio. It'd be great to be able to keep in touch if I could. You know, if anything ever came up, I'd love the opportunity. You know, I really enjoyed sort of working with you. And I think it was probably our time together on that course, because he picked me up at, I don't know, what time it was in the morning from Manchester. And we obviously drove down to, I think it was in Warwick. So we're in the car together a long time. Obviously the course and bits and pieces and driving back. So it was a bit of a long day in that sense. So compared to a normal student and, you know, senior and sort of mentor position at that point, it was, we probably spent more time together than you would do with in a normal placement. So hopefully made him be able to think, oh, he's all right, this lad, you know, he's okay. So anyway, university finished, I graduated, we qualified. I went off to America to work in, you know, like soccer camp sort of thing. So I was out there for 6 weeks, and then I went to Canada to see a mate of mine who was a physio as well, studying. He'd finished, he'd gone back to Toronto. So we drove up to Toronto, had a week with him up there. And when we were up there, we'd been out for the day, came back, and then my friend's mum said, no, we've had a phone call from your mum, John, saying that you need to get in touch with her. So you're thinking, oh no, what's happened here? So I rang my mum, and anyway, you know, Dave had spoken to her. I don't know how he tracked my mum down or whatever, phone number from somewhere. And this was before, I don't think I had a mobile phone at that point. So it was one of them saying, look, opportunities come up. Would you like to come and speak to us? And so I'm like, well, I'm in Canada at the time going, yeah, but I don't fly back till whenever and blah, blah, blah. No problem. But I went back and sort of had an interview, if you like, up at Blackburn then. So that would have been, I don't know, maybe September, something like that in 2000. So I turned up and Dave said, look, it's with the academy. It's not with me at the first team, but there's an opportunity for you. So the academy manager at the time was a guy called Bobby Downs. So I'm thinking, right, I'm going to meet Bobby Downs and have an interview. So I just went in and dressed up like, no, where is this? So-and-so show you where there's some kit, go and get some kit on. So I'm thinking, all right, that's standard, because that's what happened when I was on placement. Just to fit in a little bit and not stand out like a sore thumb, go and get some kit on. Everyone's got the same kit on, you blend in a little bit. So I'm there and I'm going through bits, and you know, the head physio of the academy was there, and he sort of said, right, we'll just get stuck in, do what you've been doing on your placement, have a, you know. I'm thinking, all right. So the day went on, and it went on and on. So like, I've arrived in the morning, it's like 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I'm going, like, this was before the days of having a day-long interview, you know. That these days it's probably like, well, you've got this room, you're going to have an interview in there, then you're going to go and meet someone else. This was just like, I get on with the job anyway. Gets called into the office in the afternoon by Bobby, and Bobby says, how have you found it? I said, yeah, like, great. I'm thinking, what's going on? This is the strangest thing I've been involved in. I guess now it all seems quite normal, though. We think about interviews now, yeah, people think you're a good lad. You seem to fit in. Dave Fevers give you a good shout. Yeah, do you want to start? When can you start? Like, I'm thinking, right, this is crazy. And what had happened is I'd already got a job at the hospital. I'd got a job lined up at Jimmy's in Leeds, and I'd sort of said to him, look, I'm due to fly back on whatever it was, a Saturday or Sunday, and I was due to start work on the Monday in Leeds. So I've rung them saying, look, I'm literally I'm going to be no use to anyone. Could I have an extra week and start the week after. So they made a bit of a fuss, but gone, oh, go on then. Well, in this week is when I've got this other job then now. So I've arrived back, got myself a different job, and I'm having to ring the woman up. And Bobby Downs has gone, well, you can use my phone here in the office now if you want. Okay, no, I insist. Go on, just crack on, give her a ring, tell her you won't be joining them on Monday, and you're going to come here instead. Most awkward conversation. This poor woman. I'm one of them people. If I give my word to do something, I do it, and I don't like going back on that. But my friend in Canada, before I set off back, I'm saying to him, what am I going to do? I've already given my word to someone. He's like, well, if you don't do it, I'm doing it. Like, I'm coming back to England and I'm doing it. So he sort of convinced me it was the right thing to do. Just get on and take the job. And I never forget this woman sort of saying to me, well, you do realise that, I didn't know what she was going to say. You do realise you're never going to have your junior rotations now, don't you? And I was like, yeah, I'm going to gamble though. I'm going to gamble. I'm just going to go for it. But to be fair, David would always say, look, you need to do, your junior rotations, great bit of grounding for you, good varied experiences. And I said to Dave, I can't turn it down. Like, how could you're offering me a job? Bobby's offered me a job. How could I not come and work in football? So what I've always wanted to do, So yeah, I got my first job then at the academy at Blackburn. So yeah, great experience, great place to start work. We had a great facility, really good staff. But yeah, it just all went. It was a bit of a blur again. It all went really quickly, and all of a sudden, before you know it, you're off a plane from America and Canada, and you've got a job in football. So
what was that? So you've gone from basically graduated, you've been on holiday, and then all of a sudden you're now almost, well, you're working in elite sport. So how did you find that transition?
Yeah, I think it's going into it. It was I kind of knew what to expect a little bit because I'd been obviously on placement, say, a few months before, and got that insight into what it was going to be like. Obviously, that my placement was with the first team. This was with the academy, so it was slightly different. And then you've got to think this was like the year 2000. So when we look at academies now and the infrastructure and the number of staff and the amount of people that are there, obviously academies have sort of grown arms and legs with the EPPP and things, and the standards that they've put in place for care and development within an academy. But back then, Blackburn was seen as they built this brand new building, brand new training ground for the academy that was tremendous. Had a swimming pool, gym, indoor football pitch. I mean, state of the art for the time, and still a really good facility now. So I guess that I just looked at it as like the transition, being fortunate to be in that environment, and just one of those. How lucky am I to be here? Working in this environment, and a great group of people to learn from. Because as one of the coaches said to me at the time, look at you skipping down the lane. Look, happiest man alive, and they're going, welcome to the real world of football. It's not all as pretty as it sort of looks from the outside. Maybe it's hard work, and there's a lot of sacrifices that are going to go into surviving in this environment. So yeah, I think I didn't know what to expect in the sense of maybe commitment time-wise, and what I'd have to commit in that sense. I just knew this is what I was going to do for the rest of my career. So, get stuck in. You were I remember getting told off one day by a coach called Rob Kelly. I'm sure you may have crossed paths with Rob. Rob's still in football at the moment, and Rob absolutely lambasted me one day for forgetting the plastic cups for the drinks at half time in the under-18s game. And he was deadly serious, like, standards. Don't forget the small things. These are the most important things. And this plastic cup. So obviously Rob Kelly, Bobby Downs, they were having a little chuckle behind the scenes, but I was a fresh-faced thinking, I've had the worst day of my career because I forgot the plastic cups for Rob. But you end up, you're taking a warm-up, you're filling the drinks bottles, you're doing everything. You weren't just a physio. So at that stage in football, you were the sort of jack of all trades, and then focusing on your bit of dealing with the injured lads too. But yeah, great grounding experience and great staff and people who I'm still friends with now. sort of guided me, let's say. They guided me and introduced me to the world of professional sport.
And how linked in were with like the first team and Dave and the team there, were you?
Yeah, when I first started, I did 5 years in the academy. And when I first sort of started, it was one of those things where I always envisaged that's where I wanted to be with the first team. And that was nothing against the environment in the academy. It was just that it was something that's where I saw myself getting to. So I tried to think about how I'd get to that, how I'd be able to do that, what I needed to do to get to, to work in that environment, because that's obviously where I wanted to be. So if we were quiet, if we had a quiet afternoon, or the lads were at college sometimes during the day or afternoons or different bits and pieces, it's quite often a few of them days I'd work from, getting at, 8:30, and then the kids had finished training in the evening at 9. So I'd just be there for the day, like a couple of days a week like that. And so sometimes in the bits in the middle, in the afternoon, it might be a bit of a lull. So I'd nip down to the first team training ground, because it was within walking distance, if you like, through a housing estate, and you were down to the first team room, and I'd just go hang around, really, just try and soak things up and see what they were doing, stimulate some ideas. Dave was always big on using isokinetics and bits and pieces. That was something I'd never come across before. They had the old like Cybex reaction mat on the floor, and again, yeah. Nick Broad, who's obviously unfortunately no longer with us, was there as a sports scientist at the time. Just picking up information. I mean, when I look back, Paul Kelly was there as the other physio with Dave. Phil Batty was the doctor with the first team. And it's probably not till you come away you realise how good those people were that you work with, and how well they supported you during some difficult times. I remember when I was still in the academy, my father passed away, and I remember going to talk to Phil Batty and saying, look, this is what they're saying is wrong with him. I don't really know about this area, and I could tell by his face it wasn't a good thing. I remember him, I said, oh, look, being there and being able to say that and help me in that period, I'll never forget what those guys did, because it was really tough. But yeah, even as you go through your career and you look back on them, not just as human beings and as people, but as professionals, like they were, what a great medical department and group of people they were. And I'm still in touch with all of them now. Like, I know that if I ever have any issues or anything, or need any help with anything, then they're always there. And I think that's a good showing of their characters and the relationship that I had with those people. But yeah, that was sort of my first 5 years there at Blackburn, was in the academy, and then I was lucky enough to sort of go to work with the first team for 4 years after that. But during those early days, it was me sort of being a bit busy, really, trying to get involved in things that really I didn't need to go. So I was turning up at reserve games and just watching reserve games with the academy coaches, just to see what it was like at the next level. It's funny because I look back and I say to Paul Kelly and Dave, I said, I must have been a nightmare at times, you must have just wanted to bat me on the head to just tell me to relax and get on with my own job and not worry about everything else going on. But no, it's just basically interesting, wanting to be, how was I going to get to that level, that these guys were at, and that's what drove me on, really, in the early days.
And so do you think it was that sort of behaviour, though, that did make them think, actually, yeah, you can see someone's effort or work rate or application or desire?
Yeah, I mean, I hope so. That it wasn't, you can sort of only really realise these things sometimes by looking back and reflecting on it, can't you? But that was just me. That I had the desire, probably patience. I always said, when everyone, what's your biggest weakness? And I think it's probably patience, because I knew where I wanted to get to. I knew where I wanted to be. And I was trying to figure out how to get there. And at those phases and stages of life was like, right, well, what can I do? Well, the only way I can sort of do is by learning more, by figuring out how things work. And, it'd be one of those things where you see it in sport quite often. Well, there's a way of getting there, and there's a way of working your way there. Do you know what I mean? I think in my way. And I knew that I worked with really good people. So at times my impatience or my frustrations were that I was going nowhere. And for them to be able to, if you like, manage me and say, but you are going somewhere, you're doing this. And during that point, I did my master's degree and bits as other stimulus, if you like. So I always felt like I was moving forward. I always felt like, and I'm probably less so today, but I'm still a bit the same, is I always want to be moving forward in one way. And whether that be in the education system, will that be in a life situation, family and things like that, or whether that be a career thing. And as long as I was always moving forward in one way, I could handle that. I was happy with that. My most frustrating points came when I felt I couldn't see a way through, or I couldn't see an opportunity to move forward, because I felt then, well, if I'm not moving forward, I'm going to stagnate. I'm never going to get to where I need to be, and I need to be. And I've probably been my own worst enemy at times with things like that. I've probably, rightly or wrongly, maybe irritated other people, or just people just saying, John, just calm down, just enjoy what you're doing at the moment, and don't worry. I remember not so many years ago, another ex-colleague of mine, a guy called Danny Donachie, saying, John, I said to him, it's the first time in my life I don't really have a plan of what's going to happen in the next year or two. And he said, well, John, what's wrong with that? I said, well, my mind struggles to cope with that and compute with that. I always need to have a target or an ambition or something that I'm striving towards. I can't stand still. I'm too busy. Like I need to be doing something constantly. But yeah, those guys definitely managed me very well, I think, when I was younger, to keep my enthusiasm, not dampen that down, but still, keep me guided on a good path, really.
Yeah, I'd like to ask a bit more about the Danny thing, because I know that he's got an interesting philosophy on a few different things that I've seen him sort of put out on social media, which he's obviously had a really successful career. But in terms of for you moving forward then from Blackburn, what was the next step for you?
Yeah, well, like I say, I've been in the academy for 5 years at Blackburn. Then there was a big sort of change. Mark Hughes was a manager. They were changing from the first team training ground, and the academy was sort of switching buildings, really. And Bobby Downs, I'd sort of intimated that I'd love to work with the first team if they were expanding staff. When they changed buildings, I was one thing that didn't change, if that makes sense. I stayed in the same place, and then I worked with the first team for 4 years. But by that point, I've been at Blackburn for 9 years, so I'm in the same building. I know I'd changed roles and things, but like for anyone in any job, 9 years, particularly in football and sport, to be in one place 9 years in the same place is a long time. And during that time, I'd done my master's degree. I'd got that out of the way, which I always felt if I wanted to go and be a head physio someday, I'd need a master's degree. Rightly or wrongly, but that was my thought in the sense of moving forward educationally. And then it was getting to a point where I've been in the first team 4 years, and again, I look back at the staff that we had, and I think, right, these guys are more experienced than I am. They've been in football longer than I have. They're all very good professionally. So for me to, unless one of those guys moves, I didn't think they were, looking at that at the time, then the only thing that was going to happen was that I might have to move, which would be a massive shock to the system. So, yeah, I remember going for numerous different interviews at different clubs, big clubs, if you like, small clubs, different roles. And I remember I've been for an interview 1 week somewhere, and Dave had been sort of supporting me and trying to sort of say, look, I appreciate where you are in your career and what you're after. He said, but it's not bad here. You know what I mean? Don't change for the sake of changing. Anyway, I've been for an interview somewhere, and they'd offer me a job in football. It was in the championship as a head physio in the championship. And then I had a phone call out of the blue from someone that I knew from rugby league, who trained at Blackburn when Bradford Bulls were going to the grand final in rugby league. They'd used, because of the contact with Dave, and Dave had worked in rugby league before, they trained there, and I've just kept in touch. I've been over to have a bit of a work experience day, if you like. I took Bobby Downs with me, and Bobby went over, and we spent a day with Bradford Bulls, and Steve McNamara was sort of the first team coach there, and he's sort of who I'd kept in contact with, and Nobby was the manager, and we'd gone over, had a day there, and then they'd come over and done the same, and I just kept in touch with Steve, and he rung me. Like, it was weird because I'd been offered this job, and I'd have had to probably move out. It was one of those where it was further away. It was going to be an effort. It was going to be a big change in lifestyle. And I was umming and ahhing whether it was the right thing to do. And then that day I got a phone call from Steve McNamara saying, look, somebody's looking if you're interested in rugby league. So I said, oh, yeah, go for it. So anyway, within the space of 24 hours, it had all moved on, and I was sat at Warrington Wolves talking to them about potentially going and being their head physio. So I'd gone through, I'd met the manager there, who was a guy called Jimmy Lowe's, and the doctor, and we'd done like a bit of more of an informal interview, if you like, of going, right, would you come here? So I've gone away, and I didn't know anything about rugby league. So I'd not played rugby league, I'd not followed rugby league. So I'm ringing, my mate Griff, going, Griff, I've got this opportunity, like, one's in football, one's in rugby league. I said, but obviously Warrington was literally around the corner from where I lived in Worsley in Manchester. So it was like, this one's easy in the sense of like geographically. Financially, it was a bit better than the football one. So I'm like, well, it's winning on all fronts. The only thing it's not winning on is I don't know anything about rugby league. This could be a disaster. I might last 2 minutes. So a game, and Griff's going, well, I'll come to the games with you. We'll go and watch a few games. Mate, honestly, he said, I know all about rugby league. We'll be fine. You know what I mean? So like, all right, great. Let's have a think about it. And I've gone back and spoke to Dave as well. I said, look, Dave, I've had these 2 opportunities. And he said, well, that's a no-brainer. Like this, looking at me like I've got 2 heads and thinking, I said, well, Warrington. So I said, well, yeah, but Dave, it's all right for you because you've come from playing rugby and you've come from working in rugby. It seems like a natural thing to you. He said, well, what are you going to do at the football club that you're going to go to? I said, well, what do you mean? He said, well, it's going to be the same as what you do here, except you're probably going to have to just do more stuff because you're probably going to be on your own and you won't have as much support as you've got working with us here. So if you want to challenge yourself, go to rugby league. I'm thinking, well, yeah, I can see your argument there, but I really don't know anything about rugby league. So anyway, that night, me and Griff were going to watch. Went to watch. Who did we watch? Saints and Warrington at Saints. And Warrington never win at Saints. That was the story of. Anyway, they didn't win that night either. But I remember stood there with my mate Griff going, what's happened here? What's happening there? He looked at me and went, I don't know. I just came for the night out. I don't know anything about rugby league. I'm like you've just taught me into a big career change. I've just told Blackburn Rovers I'm going to leave them. They were in the Premier League, finishing 8th, 9th in the Premier League every season, to go to rugby league. All on the say so that you know what, you're going to support me through this period and you're going to guide me through it. And now you're telling me you don't know anything. Yeah, but this might be a good crack for a night out and things. Like, wow, I'm making my career decisions based on trusting my friends who were, yeah. So anyway, I chose rugby league, and to be honest, I think like Dave was, he was less. I think he was more proud, probably not the right word, but he was happy with me going to choose a rugby league one, but because of the challenge I was going to face by doing that, and he knew that how much I would learn, having experienced that himself. He knew how much I'd learn in that environment of going to a rugby league. But I was also at that phase in my own career where I needed more responsibility. I needed a bit more of an opinion. I was the 3rd physio at Blackburn in the sense of a hierarchy. And that's how the structure of the club and the department was. And I don't take that it wasn't in a negative way. It was just that's where I was. I needed to go and see. I probably needed to prove to myself that I can run a department. I'm good enough to do that. I've got the experience enough to be able to have a go at that. We come back to these life plans and moving forward again of going, I was hopeful that I would be a bit more senior than I was. But Blackburn had been so stable for so many years, medical staff wise, that I couldn't see another way through other than going. And yeah, the chance then to go and be in charge somewhere in a different sport, have sort of full reins of the department, if you like. The challenge of that was exciting. You know, like I remember thinking, this is amazing. You know, it's going to be amazing. But yeah, I mean, I remember sort of then a couple of weeks before I was due to go, and they were talking about the coach changing. Now, obviously, I've just been employed by the coach that was there, so I'm thinking, oh, it has gone a bit quiet actually on the phone. Is all this sorted out for when I get there? So I thought, what I'll do, I'll ring him and see how it's going. Yeah, I'm sure it'll all be all right, but I might not be head coach when you get here. I'm thinking, oh, here we go. What have I done? I've left the most stable thing in my life. It's the only place I'd ever known as a working life was Blackburn Rovers. And now here I was sort of half gambling to go to rugby league in a sport I knew nothing about. In a sport I didn't know any of the players. I didn't know any of the people other than a couple that I'd come across and forged some relationships with over the years. So yeah, the week before I went there, or 10 days or 2 weeks before I went to Warrington, they changed the head coach. Tony Smith became the head coach at Warrington. So yeah, it was to say it was panic stations at that point was an understatement in my. I remember David Dunn taking the mick out of me, and just sort of saying like, well, I bet you're a bit worried now, aren't you, John? You know, a bit worried about this one now. And I'm like, well, yeah, I am really done it. Stop taking the mick, mate, because I've had them a notice in here and I'm gone, sort of thing. So yeah, that was interesting. Arriving at Warrington with a new head coach, and Jimmy Lowe's had become the assistant sort of to the head coach at that point. So he'd sort of, you know, Tony Smith had come in above everyone there, as sort of the head of coaching. So yeah, it was not a smooth transition in my head of how that was going to be. It'd been eventful getting to that point, but yeah, turning up at Warrington then. My first day at Warrington was a game as well. Straight in into the thick of it. It was again another challenge in life. Of talk about not making it easy for yourself. When can you start? Oh, Saturday, great. We play whoever we played. I can't remember. I think it was Hull KR at home. Straight into a game, which, as those listening yourself well know, the role of a physio on a match day in rugby league is far different to that of a physio in football. So a lot more active.
So yeah, talk me through that then. So you go in on your first day, you've got this game. Like, how did you find that experience? Have you done any research, or like, did you know what you were going into?
I didn't fully know what I was going into. I knew obviously the environment's a lot different. Like it's, I knew there was going to be, in comparison to football and taping, strapping, these sorts of things, I knew it was going to be a heck of a lot more. I mean, it was a full-on sort of hour strapping the team before the game, plus you know the masseurs doing their work, and the physio basically just taped before the game, strapping, taping for ages. So before I got there, a friend of mine was a rugby league player, a guy called Andy Titterell, who's he's top rugby league then, sorry, rugby union. He'll kill me for that. We need to edit that out, by the way, otherwise he'll be on the phone straight away. Rugby union player Andy Titterell, and he'd obviously had a great career. At the time he was at Sale, and he said, well, come down and see our physio at Sale, because he'll help you. He'll, like, if you're not used to strapping shoulders, he'll run through it with you, and you'll go through, and you'll be able to, you can show him bits about football, and he can show you bits about rugby. Why don't you just get together? So to be fair, Andy arranged that, and Doug Jones was a physio at Sale, who again, I'm sure you know Doug, who was really, really kind to me. Like, what a great guy. Met him in clinic, and he just said, right, this is what I think you need to know. Going in day one, if you're going into a game, right, let's practice some shoulder strappings, elbow strappings, let's do this, that, and the other. And in football, obviously, you don't really have to do that. You know what I mean? It's not commonplace, and definitely, I wasn't overly familiar with, strapping people's shoulders for games. that was something that was new to me. So he spent, I can't remember if it was one night, a couple of nights. I think after we met up one night, he was going to meet his wife for dinner. He said, come with us, it'd be good. And what a good all-round good bloke. And he really took care of us. So obviously I'd gone into them, with that little bit of experience. That was my preparation, if you like, for going in. Plus obviously watching a few more games and researching sort of the positions of players. The lads, I mean, if they could hear this now, I remember before I got there going on the website, printing off the picture profiles of all the players, cutting them out. Wife sat there on the other side of the line, right? Who's this? Flipping picture after picture. Oh, I think that's Lee Breers. I think that's Mickey Iam and Adrian Moore. And going through this and trying to prepare myself in that way to go right. At least I know I'm going to know who the lads are. I'd asked someone at the club, the doctor who was there who interviewed me, to go through and get a rough idea of what strappings we would need on the day. So at least I could go in and go, right, at least I know I've got to get through 10 strappings, 15, whatever it was. I can't remember, it's too long ago. So I had a bit of insight into what was going to happen beforehand. And that was before the game even started. So they've since told me afterwards, he said it was the funniest thing they've ever watched is me doing that first game and literally having no idea, running around like an headless chicken on the rugby pitch. Because obviously in rugby league, the game doesn't stop when the physio goes on. The physio's on, you're in the middle of the action, on and off, non-stop. Whereas obviously in football, game stops, we all come on, do what we need to, they come off, everything, there's obviously that break. Not in rugby league, it's full on. And I used to love it. Absolutely love it. I used to cover so much distance running in the games. Like it was like my biggest fitness session of the week in the sense of running around after them. Big arc runs from the bench around the back of the line. Go and tell so and so this. Go and tell them that, because in rugby league, like the trainer couldn't come on the pitch or the coach couldn't pass the messages or set plays or things like that. So they'd tell the physio because the physio could go on the game, so can go on the game whenever they want. So they just basically you drifting around in the game, firing out information of right, this set play, look, they're not defending that very well, target that guy, do this. But obviously that first day, I remember the coach saying, right, get to the halfbacks, tell them that they need to do this set play. And I'm like, right. I didn't know who the halfbacks were. I said, so I was like, right, tell me the number. Tell me exactly. I'm intelligent enough. If you say to me, right, we need to do. We broke up the pitch into areas. Right, we're going to kick to blue and we want to run some spears in this. Like we're going to do these set plays. Tell me exactly what you need me to tell him. I'll tell him word for word. I'm intelligent enough to run around the pitch, remember what you've said to me, and pass it on. Tell me what number, and tell me what you need to say. So it was hilarious. So I'm running around. I'm stood behind the line, looking up and down, looking for the number. Like, where are they in this line of players? Going, right, go and tell, Michael Monaghan he needs to do this. All right. But I'm going to be looking at the back of his head. And bear in mind, I've only had the flip charts for the front of the head. So I've only seen the faces. I'm not used to. So, yeah, comical. Absolutely comical. But Tony Smith was a manager. Tony and I, I've not spoken to him in a little while, but I know that I can pick up the phone to him. So I touched base with him probably about 6 months ago. Maybe a bit longer. I guess with COVID, we kind of get a bit lost, don't we? But they'd had a bad injury at OKR, and I'd spoke to him about that and just sort of sent my thoughts to everyone that had to deal with that there. And he was just laughing. And I remember him saying to me, he said, do you think you're a good physio? This is from the head coach. I'm thinking, where's this going? Like, this was sort of after the game or the day after the first game. I think you're a good physio. I said, well, I think I'm all right. Like, I'm okay. I've got some good experience. And he said, good. Because I know a few good physios, if you're not. Like, whoa. Gee, I've only been here a couple of days. But it was just his way of saying that he liked me. I always say to people, if people are not taking the mick out, it's because they don't like you. If they start winding you up and taking the mick, you're all right. So yeah, but I've obviously come home that week, first week in rugby league, and My wife Sally's like going, "Oh, how is it?" I'm like, "Yeah, okay, we'll be all right. We'll get through it. Don't worry." But yeah, I mean, great days transitioning to rugby league, and I probably didn't spend long enough in rugby league. I look back now and I love it. Like, still watch rugby league now. I've not worked in rugby league for 10 years. Never ever watched it before. I worked in it, and now I'll still, check on the lads who still play and who I know of and bits and pieces. But yeah, it was an interesting transition into rugby league. But yeah, like awesome. Warrington was a good club.
How long were you there for that role?
So I was there for 3 years, and so I went there. Sort of, I joined in the February, which was, they were sort of just in season. They just had a few games, and I stayed for 3 years. And at the end of my first year, it'd been sort of the end of Tony's first year as a head coach. So we were due to move training grounds. There was always a thing when I first went to Warrington. They only showed me the stadium. Where we actually trained was the old stadium, which was a dilapidated old stadium called Wilderspool. And a few of the stands were all condemned for demolition and bits. And our gym, if you like, was underneath the main stand. And that was the only reason I think it was open, was because that's where the lads trained and that's where the gym was. So at the end of that first year, Tony had a change around in the staff and bits, but we were due to move training ground. So he said, right, there's no one left to sort out the new training ground. So there's the building, there's a plan, sort it out. So basically they were building this, like a metal frame building, if you like, metal roof, metal wall. We had to do a bit of brickwork around the side, but everything inside was like, right, someone's done a rough idea what it might look like, but let's just make it what we want. Here you go, John, sort that out. So I was then sourcing running tracks, flooring for wrestling, like flooring for the actual gym, what the treatment room, because I obviously at this point thought, right, well, I'm having my treatment room in this building as well, because I'm not getting stuck in a little room somewhere on the other side of campus at Chester University's Warrington campus. So I'm going to be in the thick of the action here. So we stole a big corner of it and made it a treatment room. So they were all laughing, going, when by the time it got built, going, hang on a minute, who put this massive treatment room in here? Well, if you put the plans in the hands of the physio, then we're going to obviously be physio led in the building. And along with that, then he asked me at the same time to go and work with the England team. So and to assist sort of there was already a physio doing the England team at that point, but we had a Four Nations at the end of that season, and he asked if I'd go and assist the physio for the Four Nations. So I did the England team then for 2 years, as well as being at Warrington for 3 years. And in my final year at Warrington, I didn't continue with the role with England, and then took on a role where they put together sort of a collective team. I think you call it the All Stars now. It was called the Exiles. So the first ever Exiles game, which was all the Antipodean and overseas players were allowed to play against England. So I was then the physio for the first ever one of these games, which was tremendous. So over the 3 years of being at Warrington, 2 years with England, had a year, not a year, but at the end of the final season, we did the Exiles team, and then then an opportunity came again to move on. Looking back now, and that's why it's interesting. I said to you before we sort of started today. The interesting thing of looking back you forget about the things you've done in life. You forget about the times, crazy things. I was just speaking to my wife earlier, and she was saying, "Do you remember the time when, I walked into this old gym in Wilderspool, and I'm thinking, what have I done here? This place is like an absolute bomb site. It's mouldy, it's damp. It's just a tip. It's used by all sorts of, the first team, the reserve team grade. I'm walking down, and there's a massive lad there, and one of the props, a lad called Gareth Carvel, real, big boy, Yorkshire lad. He's looked at me and gone, looked me up and down. I'm thinking this is a bit weird. But I walked past him just to see what kind of rehab area there was at the far end of the gym, which there wasn't much, by the way. As I'm walking back down, he's laughing to himself, and I'm thinking, oh, where's this going now? When you get that sniff of just like, he's up to something here. He's come over and put his arm around me and like give me a little cuddle. He went, "You're not bad, you are you, John boy? You seem all right, you. You're good enough for them footy lads, you're good enough for me." And then he picked me up. Now I'm 6'2", I don't know, weigh 85 kilos. He's picked me up like I was a feather, upside down, shook me, and gone, "You'll do for me, John boy. You'll do for me," like this. And like I'm thinking, wow, you've made me feel like the smallest person in the world. It pops me back down and says, "You'll do for me, lad. You'll look after us, won't you? You'll look after us," like this. And I'm thinking, geez, right, wow, this is week one, week, whatever it was. I'm like, this is crazy. I've never met people that strong in my life, or that hard is probably the right word. Hardest people I've ever worked with in my life. Phenomenal. And he's just one, like I say. I mean, just remember one of them giving me, when we moved training grounds, it must have been another season, there was like the fullback. So in theory, you're thinking in your mind, the fullback's probably not the biggest lad in the world. You're possibly bigger. And a lad called Richie Mathers was giving me a cuddle. He said, "You're great, you, John," giving me a cuddle like this. And between us, he gave me a squeeze, and he just heard a, and he's looked at me. I've looked at him and going, "You've just broke my ribs." He's going, "No." I'm like, "Mate, you've just broke my ribs." So he's given me a cuddle, and he's cracked 2 of my ribs. I'm like, how am I going to treat the rest? I've got to run on the pitch tomorrow night. Like, and yeah, I mean, you just laugh because you couldn't write it, could you? But I mean, that was just through affection of looking after him and his mates, of like, just, they don't realise how strong and tough they are. I was just some, skinny boy with not much muscle that he's just managed to break. Anyway, we laughed about it, so everything was fine.
So was that when you were feeling some technical?
Well, when people started breaking my ribs? No, I think it was like another year or so after that. But I'd always looked at it, and I was really, really, really fortunate in rugby league. I'd gone there, I'd worked with a successful team. In the first year I was there, we won the Challenge Cup. Second year, again, we won the Challenge Cup. Never quite been consistent enough in the league, but they'd not won anything before that for a long time. I can't remember how many years, but decades. So in my first year, we've won the equivalent of the FA Cup. I've worked in football for 9 years, never been to Wembley. I've been to Wembley 2 years in a row. I'd been part of a team that had never lost a game in 2 years in the Challenge Cup. And then in my final year, I'd been working with England, successful team at Warrington. I'm thinking, I don't know in rugby league how it gets any better than what this is. And again, as I said earlier, I'm probably my own worst enemy at times because I'm impatient, and I'm thinking, well, my ambition was always to be head physio, Premier League Football Club. It's easy for me. And I talk to my staff now sometimes, I say, right, well, where are you going to? What's your end game? What are you thinking? And I always thought, when I speak to people, I always thought, well, how do you not know this? How do you not have an answer? But maybe it was because I was so single-minded that that's what I was going to do, and I'm not, and I felt myself not getting further away from that, but I couldn't see how I was getting any nearer to it. Because educational-wise, masters, I've done that. We just started my first daughter in my second year in rugby league. So family was moving forward, education was still, career-wise, I felt I don't know where I'm going. So I started looking again and just sniffing around, and again an opportunity came up to be at Aston Villa, and to go there. And at that point, I knew it'd be a big decision because I knew it'd be, my wife was teaching at Manchester Met at the time. She was lecturing at university. She got herself a great career. And I knew, and we obviously had my first daughter, I knew it'd be a big, we're going to move the family here. If something comes up that's worth it, we'll end up going. And then Aston Villa came up, and I spoke to them. And yeah, it was one of those where it's like an opportunity to go, I can't turn this down, because I see this again as a path for me to get to where my end goal was always going to be. So yeah, it came up. I knew one of the lads that worked there already, so that was easy. I knew a couple of players who worked there, so they put a word in for me as well, in the sense of to support my application, if you like, for that role. And yeah, then the chance to go to Aston Villa, and to be honest, I don't think I realised how big Aston Villa was until I'd left. So even all those years, 9 years I did at Aston Villa, until I've left now, I probably realise now just how big a football club that actually is. At the time when you're there and you're just living your life and you're getting on with things, how many people support that club and how much it affects people's lives day to day, and it was probably a bigger club than I realised until I left, even despite all the great things that we did whilst we were there, But yeah, so then I went to Aston Villa, back to football. I was, like you asked earlier, I was always a football man. Football was always my main passion. The chance to get back at such a big club, I jumped to the opportunity. In fact, we were in pre-season in Sydney at the time when I got offered the job. So it was a bit of a weird one because my wife and daughter were out there with us, and they'd stayed with a player, an Australian lad who played at Blackburn. So he was sort of, looking after family-wise, them guys for me, whilst I was in camp with the team. So it was a bit of a weird one because I sort of resigned when we were in Australia. Obviously, I'd wonder things in the background that might happen, but it actually all sort of went through for me to go back to football during that time. So that was a strange time to leave Warrington because it was right in the middle of them pre-season. So they were obviously planning for the time, we were planning what we were going to do as a medical department, all those things were, and yet then I went back into football and we're coming to the end of the season, we've got like 3 months left to get through the season, you know what I mean? It was a big contrast. And so yeah, I moved to Aston Villa at that point. 9 years at Villa.
So who was in the setup when you went in there then, and how big was that?
So we went down there. There was a full-time doctor. There was, let me think, 2 other physios with the first team, and then a physio with the reserve team, and then myself. And I went with I always laugh about football at times and silly titles. I went as an injury prevention specialist. I still don't to this day know exactly what that means, but yeah. So as part of the physio team, that was my role when I first went in there. And yeah, like I said, it was sort of like 2 of the physios with the first team, and then a guy who sort of did 23s at that point. Over time, things changed and people came and went, and it evolved. And over 9 years, it was a lot more fluid in people of any department. I think I'd worked in comparison to Blackburn, which had been quite stable, Warrington, which was pretty stable, obviously under there. So it was strange when people changed roles or people came and went, because I wasn't really used to that. I mean, after 3 months of the doctor employing me who was there, he left, so he was sacked. Because he came sort of with, I say sacked, I don't know if he was sacked officially, I guess whether he just resigned or left, I'm not sure, but because he'd come with the manager, he left with the manager, if that makes sense. And he moved on. So then we had another doctor in, and it was again a bit strange because I was then, he didn't know me again from, anyone else. So it was, I felt a little bit more supported, obviously going in, being brought in by a specific person, and then going and doing a job when that changed and the manager changed and everything changed again. It made me slightly unsure of where I sat in the whole system, but yeah, survived a bit longer. Survived another 8.5 years after that. So yeah, interesting.
So it changes. Like we know that a lot of medical teams can change, maybe less so now, more recently, but it still does have an impact. What's it like when someone comes in with new ideas, whether they're foreign or not? And how does the dynamic change from like an S&C side to physio, sports science, doctor?
Yeah, I mean, I think I could honestly have written an entire book of my time of crazy things that happened in sport during my time at Aston Villa. Yeah, I mean, the dynamics between departments, I think probably more so, and that we're talking, when did I go there? So 10 years ago, it is now since I joined Aston Villa. If we think about the changes in 10 years of sports science departments, medical departments, and the evolution of who's involved in that, who's, all the different facets of psychologists, nutritionists, everything becoming more and more involved in football. From going back to the time of when I first started, and there was Dave and Paul Kelly with the first team, and me and the head academy physio in the academy, and that's it. you know, plus the doctor, obviously, to them being like, you know, through the ages of numerous sports scientists, strength and conditioning coach, you know, performance analysts, you know, just the arms and legs of it. So the dynamic was constantly changing, you know, and a lot of that was dictated by managers. And I think obviously now the model is trying their best to get the backroom staff, if you like, as stable as possible, and then obviously the coach coming in and bringing his sort of nearest innermost circle of support staff only with him. But I mean, it doesn't always. It's nice to have that as an idea and a plan, but we all know that I've worked in sport. That's lovely. But I know two lads who are recently out of work because managers change. You know, despite the fact being told, no, we're building this structure and this system that you guys will survive no matter whatever happens. But you know, it doesn't. And people have different agendas. You know, I know some great physios that have come and gone. Nothing to do with managers or coaches, but just they're where they are in life. You know, that they've. I work with a lad from New Zealand, great lad who's ended up doing all kinds of stuff in between. You know, looking after the All Whites, or you know, coming back and doing things in Baku and you know the European Games and all these things. He's out in Switzerland, I think, at the moment. You know, and looking at that was just a phase in his life. He had no intention of staying there for much longer than he did. It was just he was passing through, but he was passing through at that level, and he, you know, good clinician, good guy. So I guess it came down to people's agendas then at that point. Of you know, there's a physio there, Alan Smith, who I worked with for 9 years, who's been there for 20 odd years at Aston Villa. Just you know, he's not on a transitional one. He's there, you know, and he wants to stay there as long as possible, and you know. So we were all probably needing or wanting different things from it, but like I said before, my coming to the end of my time at Aston Villa, it was probably that element of the realization of how big the club was and how probably small my input beyond doing my actual day-to-day hands-on job was to affect the bigger picture or thing, you know, that aspect of it. And I'd really enjoyed that aspect being at Warrington, you know, like setting up the gym and being very close with the manager and being an integral part of the system of how the club worked. And that's probably what drove me in the end over the last sort of period of my time at Aston Villa to be looking elsewhere, to get that level of involvement back again, rather than just, you know, just sort of doing my hands-on and rehab bit. I felt I needed a little bit more than that personally, you know, and that's no reflection on anyone else that was there. As we sort of brought up through this talk today, a lot of it's always driven from within myself, and I just needed a bit more involvement, or a bit more to feel a little bit more part of it. I think would be a fair assessment. You know, I could have stayed there for a long time and done what I'd been doing for years, if you like, you know, and just keeping things as they were, but it's just that just wouldn't be me. In fact, towards the end of my time at Villa, I thought, I know it'd be a good idea. Let's start doing a professional doctorate, do a PhD in your spare time, of just like and then obviously I changed jobs and continued with that. So I've made myself too busy again.
So just moving on to your next move then. So you mentioned you could write a book. Are there any particular incidents that you're able to share on, anything that might make that?
Yeah, I mean, look, during my time at Aston Villa, I was there 9 years, and I think we must have had, maybe, bear in mind we had some managers for periods of like 2 years or more. I must have had at least 9 different people in charge during that time. Yeah, I mean, just all sorts happened. The one that came to me the other day, and I was thinking about like funny things that happened that you could tell the world about. Well, 2 things. One was, at one point we had a manager who was a foreign manager from overseas, and he brought some, you know, his staff with him and things. And I guess from their culture or their background or where they worked before, physio, you know, the word physio meant that you were the person in a white coat, sat in the treatment room, treating people, and that was it. So when cultures sort of collided a little bit, and you wanted to take someone out on the grass and do some functional rehab, or you wanted to do this, you know, do some work in the gym or in the indoor and do plyometrics, whatever you're doing. Yeah. He was like, no, I'll do that. So that's fine, that's great. But I need to get him to some kind of level to know that I'm happy that, you know, they've recovered to the, you know, to the degree that I need them to before we push them on too much. We need to know if they can at least run before they come to you. Anyway, so we had a few of these bits of discussion. And it was encouraged, let's say that way, that we didn't go onto the grass. So me, in my wisdom, thought, well, we've got an indoor football pitch with a running track next to it and an aero floor. So I can do most of my work dressed up as it's gym-based plyometrics, or it's, you know, running mechanics, or it's whatever it is. So anyway, at some point, this must have got back to the fitness coach. So I'm treating one of the lads on the bed who had a hamstring injury. So he's lying on his front, so he's face down, doesn't really know what's going on. I'm treating him. There's another lad on another bed waiting over my shoulder, but I was the only one in the treatment room. The other guys were off looking after whatever players they were looking after. So anyway, the fitness coach has burst in and barged me out of the way, like giving me a little nudge. Come on, move, please move, like this. I'm like, what's going on here? So I've just kind of letting, you know, I'm going to start a fight with him or anything. Like, what's happening here? So the lad looks over his shoulder because he's like, what's happening now? I'm trying to get some treatment here. So he barges me out of the way and starts like massaging this lad's hamstring. So I'm going, what has happened here? Like, what have I done here? Like, I don't think I've done anything. I think at this point I'm innocent. I'm going, I don't think I've done anything to upset you. Like, but what's happening? He's like, come on. Me and you, John, we're friends. We talk. We get on well. And to be fair, I was all like, we probably got on okay. You know, like professionally, I understood where he was coming from. He knew where I was, and we could talk quite openly. He was a strong opinion sort of character, and you know, I have strong opinions too. So, but never, like, always in a nice way. It was always good. But this was different. So, like, what has happened here? So he's massaging. I'm thinking, I'm not going to bite here. I'm just going to let him get on with it. He said, how do you like it? How do you like it when I take your job? It's like, whoa, take your job. Like, I'm thinking, you've come with a manager. Like, if anyone's safe, it's you. You know what I mean? The manager's not going to get rid of you. He's just dragged you from, you know, a different country. So I've just gone, well, no worries. I'd love that. But we all work together here. We're a team. So if you can do that for me, I'll treat this lad over my shoulder. So I've just walked off and got hold of the other lad and his ankle or whatever. So I'm looking at his ankle. And he's like, no, come on. What do you feel? I was like, no, seriously, I'm not bothered. If you can do that for me and help me, fantastic, because there's one waiting here. I don't want to keep the lads waiting. I'll get on. No, come on. I know you've been going in the indoor football pitch, doing your rehab in this. He said, no. I do all the rehab. I do all the field things. I do all that. You just give them to me. I do the work. No problem. I was like, well, look, I'm just making sure he can run, you know, get to a level. I wouldn't want to waste your time because obviously you're really important compared to me. So, you know, I just wanted to make sure they could do that. I will decide. You don't need to help me. Yeah, I said, come on, let's not fall out. We're friends, you know, we work together. But the lads were in stitches, obviously, because now we look through the window of the treatment room, which looks straight into the gym, and there's a crowd of like 4, 5, 6, 7, like all the players lining up, like laughing now, going, what is going on here? We've got the fitness coach giving him a massage. He's having a go at like it. To be fair, we ended up talking it through and going. We had to write out an official framework about where people were then going to change over responsibilities. But I mean, at the time, you're just thinking like, what? How have we got to this today? What sparked this? But yeah, I mean, look, there's endless incidents. I guess some of the highlights of things that happened were like during my time at Villa, we got to, went to Wembley 5 times in 9 years. We'd gone to the FA Cup final, so we had a semi-final before that, the League Cup final, and then we had 2 playoff finals. And I'll never forget, obviously, I was so devastated when we lost the first playoff final, like really devastated. I thought if we went up at that point, then things might move forward for me professionally. We were back into the Premier League. I was good. I was devastated, and the following year when we did it, the sense of relief and the sort of elation, if you like. It's come back to bite me on the backside because we played Darby in the final, and obviously being at Derby now, that's not worked out quite that well for Derby. But I remember leaving the stadium, and it was like we can't get the bus out of Wembley. We can't get back to the hotel on the bus. And we're staying just over the road at the Hilton, so it was within walking distance. Obviously, all the fans were there. we're just going to have to run back, lads, through the crowds. So the lads were laughing, going, I'm up for it if you're up for it. So I just remember coming out. We've sneaked out the back door, like on the side of Wembley, and the hotel's there, and we're coming out, and there's me and a couple of the lads and staff-wise, and then James Chester hadn't played either, or it's such a blur, I can't remember, but Chesy's got his hood up, he's just got his coat on, and we're just going, and all of a sudden it's like, it's James Chester, and all the fans are there, we're dragging him through the crowd, we try to get back to the hotel, and everyone's obviously buzzing and over the moon, and like the feeling, and yeah, it was an unbelievable feeling, and yeah, the kit man has done an amazing job. He'd given us all a shirt with our name on the back to commemorate it and everything like that. And yeah, fantastic, part of my Aston Villa career of that. And obviously since then, they've gone to the Premier League. We were back in the Premier League before I left, and they've obviously gone on, and the club's become bigger and bigger and bigger, and the amount of finance behind it and support and what they try to do there is phenomenal. Really, they're obviously trying to. Obviously, Manchester City changed many things in Manchester when they took over there, the owners, and they obviously had an idea there, and I know they've got big ambitions for Aston Villa, but yeah, like I say, coming out the other end now and leaving Villa, like you realise just how big their ambitions are, and some of the players that they've signed recently, I think, sort of show that. But yeah, for me personally, it was probably the right time to move on, and the challenge of going to Derby, and yeah, that's where we are now. Derby and a professional doctorate to keep me going.
So yeah, like you say, you've gone from Aston Villa, who are really on an upward trajectory, loads of money, and then you're at Derby now then. So I know they've got some challenges, but how did that actual appointment come around for you originally?
Yeah, so again, like I say, I sort of got to the point where I was on the lookout for things, or sort of ear to the ground of things, if things were changing. I'd got wind that the Darby physio, he was going to move on and go elsewhere, and that obviously it's not geographically, it wasn't far for me. I wouldn't have had to move the family and and that. So I always saw that as a potential. If I ever left Aston Villa, could it be as easy as possible, if that makes sense, without having to change too many aspects of life? Because obviously, from the move from Manchester to I live in a place called Lichfield now. That transition was just me, Sally, and a baby. Really, my eldest daughter was still a baby at that point, so there was no major issues. Where I have two girls now. They both obviously school. One's 10, one's 7. So a year ago when I was leaving, it was the logistics of, if I find something, can I find something potentially where I don't have to change everybody's world other than my own, if you like. And the opportunity to go to Derby sort of came up. I did an interview there with the doctor. I spoke with the doctor there, who I knew. As football's a small world, I knew him. He'd also previously worked in rugby league. So I had a mixed background similar to I had. So it seemed a good fit. We'd worked together briefly with the England team, on tour of Australia and New Zealand before. So, he trusted me, if you like. Actually, he spoke to a few different candidates, and he thought that I was the one that fit what he was looking for. And yeah, obviously the opportunity to, Wayne Rooney was there. The manager, he was there, which is obviously a massive pull, for anyone who's ever worked in football, to have the opportunity to go and work with someone like him. And by the time I arrived at the club, he was the manager. So, between getting the job and accepting the job, he was still on the playing staff. And by the time I got there, he was my new gaffer. So. So yeah, that's been, great. I've been fortunate, like I said early on. I grew up as a Man United fan. My dad was a Man United fan, and over the years, I've managed to work with loads of ex-Man United legends. Really, there's no other word for them. And in my career, so if he was still here now, he'd be looking at it going, this is amazing. We went to something on Wednesday night. We went to the gaffers. movie premiere. It was my debut on the red carpet. It was a blue carpet because it was from Amazon Prime. And Brian Robson was there, and I've not ever met Brian Robson, so it was as a lad growing up, he was playing when obviously when I was growing up, so it was slightly surreal, if you like, and I don't, after all these years, it doesn't never really affect me, meeting footballers or players or this, that, and the other. But I think it was more the memory of being my dad's favourite player, and I've never met him sort of thing. It was interesting in that sense. But yeah, to go and work with the manager now, and Wayne's great to work with. He makes it very easy for us. Really good to work for and with. But yeah, it's been tough at Derby. It's tough for all of us. Tough for the manager, tough for the fans, tough for the club as a whole, tough for us going in. I won't lie, and we've said that openly when we got there. It's not quite what I expected going in. It's not quite what I signed up for in that sense. But it's been again a fantastic learning environment. In fact, fantastic sort of. I don't think I'll have to deal with anything like this ever again in my life. I guess the worry of the future of a football club as a whole, but then obviously the worry of the staff that we work with, the worry for everyone who's involved, and ultimately the worry for yourself and your own family that you obviously have to think about as well. It's not been an easy period at all. And the team, I mean, this season, for those that don't know, we've been deducted 21 points, so we're minus 21 points for the season. And we're mid-February and we're only 4 points off getting out of the relegation zone. So the sense of belief and togetherness and the things that's brought with it for the team and the people there of, we will fight to survive and get through this together has been a real, I spoke about wanting to be involved in things and wanting to, be an integral part of the team. And it's definitely brought us all together and brought a bigger meaning to the sense of, you're doing your job kind of thing. I always wanted to be the head physio at a football club and Premier League club, and I would hope, and still hope those ambitions are there, obviously with Darby, that we can survive this season and then push on. But yeah, it's been a lot more challenging as me developing as a leader or supporting other people or that kind of thing that I probably would never have been exposed to if I'd have stayed at Aston Villa for the rest of my career.
You can see, I think, in a lot in adversity, you can see that it can pull teams together in whatever, whether it's in sport or whatever environment. But in terms of, I saw an interview with Rooney saying that he still could be playing, which I'm sure he could. He's not even that old, is he? But
no, he's not that old now. He's a lot younger than you and I, put it that way.
Are you allowed to go on the grass at Derby?
Yeah, there's no one to tell me I can't go on the grass at Derby, so I'm all right. I'm still safe on the grass as it stands. But no, I mean, you look at the manager and you look at Wayne and and sometimes obviously he's explaining to the players or showing them, no, this is what I mean. This is the kind of thing that I think, and he could be stood there in his trainers and he'll just say, what about if you just put the ball there and just the ball will be just, it's still perfect. And I'm thinking, unbelievable ability. And he's just we were out training. There was the balls were just in a couple of groups the other day, and to him it was nothing. To me and one of the other coaches, we just looked at each other, shook eyes, and laughed. So it was windy and it's on the training pitch. We're a bit exposed, where we are, and he just kicked the ball into the wind, so it's just with a bit of backspin, so it's spinning backwards. He's landed it in a space that must have been between the barrier between one pitch and the other pitch. So between that and then just inside the pitch was a group of balls. He bounced it in that bit and it just bounced a couple of times and then just gently rolled back into the group of balls. And he's just done it messing about. And you're thinking he's not even paid any attention to that. He's just thought, I'll put this ball with the other ones there, and just put a bit of backspin on, use the wind a bit and just drift in. And I couldn't have done that in a million years. You know what I mean? He's obviously, he's not advertising for his movie, but as in, he's obviously a phenomenal football player and phenomenal, person. And this season's done a phenomenal job with everything that's been thrown in front of him. But I guess on a personal level, for me to be able to do my job, he makes that very, very easy. And I guess being in sport for so long, half the battle sometimes is we're usually the bearers of bad news. You know, we're usually the ones going, so and so's injured, or it's going to take this long for them to get back, or whatever it might be. And I always found that slightly difficult from an early age, going into Bobby Downs in the academy, going, oh well, he's injured, or the coaches from the academy. What do you mean? Well, you need to get him back quicker. You need to do this and that. I must say, the manager now he makes that really easy for us, and I think that's that element of trust and the relationship of, well, you know what you're doing in your world, so you tell me. And because I've been there with managers who you could go and tell them something, and then they go, no, go and see my man. I've got a man in London. Get him on a taxi now. We'll take him to him. Goes to see them. What did they say? 3 or 4 weeks? No, 2 weeks. And then they never see that bloke again, and the pressure's put on you to try and get them back in 2 weeks, when you know full well you're running a big risk that they might break down. But I've had managers do that and undermine you really, and be a bit disrespectful. But that's sometimes the environment that you're in. But at the moment, like I say, I couldn't ask for a better working environment with the coaches that we have and the staff that we have in the sports science and medicine departments. That it has really brought us all together. Everybody knows that everyone's doing as much as they can for the good of the team and the club. So yeah, it's really good. People keep saying to me, you must have been mad to leave Aston Villa and come here or do this, that and the other. I think, well, not really, because I've learned a lot about teamwork, and I've learned a lot about myself, of how dealing with these adversity I've been faced with. But no, it's good, and the manager's, like I say, he's great, and he's easy for us to work with as medical department.
Darby, and I appreciate your time today. That was a long one, but we've got some definitely some good stories in there.
That's if anyone's still awake. They've probably tuned out about 40 minutes ago, if not longer.
No, it was really good. No, I really appreciate that, John. And yeah, I'm sure we'll catch up again soon. But thanks for your time.
No worries. Thanks ever so much for having me, Andy. Cheers, mate.
Brilliant. Thanks, John.